Good morning and welcome to Teach Me Bees. I'm Dave Wescott and this is Scott the Beekeeper.
Hey, welcome in.
Good morning. And today we are talking about honey production. What do you know about honey production?
A little.
A little?
Not a ton. So if you are a honey production expert out there, come teach us a little bit to teach the audience. But I know a little bit about it. A couple episodes ago, we talked about honey extraction. So that's like the first step in honey production is you need to extract the honey. So go back and listen to that episode and hear a little bit of the insights of how that works. But honey production, it's the wide sale of honey. And so I know that there are some places in Washington State here that do that. A lot of local beekeepers, so like a backyard beekeeper will often do that maybe as a small like side hustle to recover some of like the financial investment that they've made in bees. People who are more dedicated like commercially, like we hope to become, their operation is much, much larger. And their prices are going to be a lot different too.
Yeah, that's cool. You know what an interesting fact about bees is? It takes 12 bees their entire lifetime to make just 1 teaspoon of honey. Did you know that?
I actually did not know that.
Each trip that a bee takes out into the field or out into the wild to gather honey, they visit 50 to 100 flowers per trip. Is that amazing or what?
That means, I'm not going to be able to do the math here on like a hive of 20,000 or 60,000 equals how much honey.
They need a lot of flowers.
But it's a lot of flowers, a lot of pollen, a lot of gathering. And you may or may not know this, but take out the winter, but from the spring, summer, fall, the average lifespan of a honeybee is about 45 days. I say take out the winter because in the winter they don't hibernate, but they stay in the hive.
And so they shed the males.
Yeah, the males are gone.
The males all die.
They go bye-bye.
It's a depressing time of year
we've talked
for
about this.
The males.
And,
it's not something that you get over quickly.
No, it's something that will be brought up.
Has your wife ever made you sleep on the couch?
Not yet.
How long have you been married?
Not quite a year and a half. Coming up on a year and a half. So, and
you haven't had to sleep on the couch yet.
I'm on a good roll here.
So you're not like the bee who's been kicked out of the hive.
Not like the drones that have been kicked out. But in the winter, the bees, they don't really go out. They stay in. So those bees live longer and they have more, they just eat the honey and try and stay warm and protect the queen. And so those bees, they live longer. But most honeybees live about 45 days. And they spend the first 3 weeks in the hive because that's where they grow up.
So 21 days are gone.
Pretty much. And so then the other 3-ish weeks of their life, they go out and collect pollen and come back. And
this is an interesting question I have for you.
Okay.
We've got human years. We've got dog years.
Yes.
Do you know what bee years are?
Depressing. That's what they are. They don't live very long.
A year in a bee's life is 1 day.
That's sad.
So that's
their midlife crisis is when they start leaving the hive. Then?
But that's relative to time.
Okay.
Like you think about how time is relative to all of us, right? Like my dog Samson, and I'm going to tie this around to being on the couch in a minute. But my dog Samson is 8 years old. Okay, 8 years old is Samson. Now, in dog years, that means he's 56 years old. He's an old man, right? You can see it in his eyes. He's got little gray around there. He's tired. He likes to lay down all the time. All he wants to do is lay down and be petted. Whereas Dakota, she's my German Shepherd killer. She's like
That's true.
a year and a half. And, she's bouncing off the walls. And that's because she's 11 years old.
Yeah.
Now, you think about the bee. 1 day is 1 year for a bee. Basically, what you're saying is they die by the time they're 45. They don't have a good healthcare plan in place.
That is not long.
But to them, it's an entire life.
It is.
You know what I mean? Like, you're 26? 28, sorry. You look 26.
I don't know if I like that
Do
or
you
not.
still get carded when you buy beer?
I do not. No.
You know what's
That's
funny?
why I don't shave this
I went to the
beard
store
off.
the other day, and I'm a non-drinker. I'm a non-drinker, but I was buying some beer for this event that I was at, and my duty was to pick up the beer. And I'm in line, and I mean, look at me. You know, like I don't look like I'm a teenager. Okay, you don't get this kind of weight that I have on me in your teens. This just doesn't happen. And the way that the weight is sculpted is just, you know, for me, it's perfect, right? Like the way that it fits my body. It's not like mushy fat. It's hard fat. Like it's muscle fat, I like to call it. And,
Strong.
you know, if you were to see a teenager of my size, you would think, oh my God, that guy is, or that guy, oh my goodness, what happened to them, right? That is horrid. And I'll tell you that this is important because Victoria's Secret, who went woke, you know, they said, hey, we're going to have models of all shapes and sizes.
Uh-huh.
Do you know that their sales went in the toilet? They went absolutely in the toilet. And the CEO actually came out and said, hey, we have to abandon this entire woke thing, and we have to go back to pretty girls in lingerie. You know, I don't know how I got on that, but at the end of the day, you got to stick with what works. And what I'm saying is that when you are in your 40s and you got the little weight, you've worked it out. So you're looking good. Your weight is looking good. And it's the same with the bees. Where was I going with this whole thing? I got into Victoria's Secret.
Something about get carded.
Oh, get carded. Yeah, that's right. Get carded. You know, normally that never happens to me where I get lost in the middle of a story. Normally I can weave that son of a gun back together again. But it's been busy. So getting carded. So I go out and I get carded. I get carded by like an 18-year-old checker.
He's just trying to do his job, you know? Probably cards everybody.
He doesn't card you. You said you don't get carded.
I haven't gone to his store.
You don't get carded. Did you get carded at the whiskey bar the other night?
No.
See what I'm saying?
No.
I feel judged, Ralph.
You should. Because, I mean, you're, as we've mentioned before, every episode, you are a specimen of a man.
I'm like Tom Cruise.
You are.
Something like that.
So, Ralph, when was the last time you got carded?
I actually got carded a few weeks ago.
What?
And it was the policy of, I know.
With that white beard?
With the white beard.
How did they card you?
I don't know.
You never know if you're faking, you know?
They said it's their policy. It doesn't matter. They got to card everyone. And honestly, I told the cashier, like, thank you. Thank you. That means a lot to me. It's the first time in probably 30 years I've been carded.
That's so... Okay.
So honey production.
Honeybees don't get carded though. They don't live long enough.
They don't get carded. But so here's the thing. Sometimes you wake up in a fog.
Yeah.
And as you get older, you're going to wake up in a fog more and more often. The more kids you have, the more you're going to feel like your life is in a fog. Right, Ralph?
Amen, brother.
Okay. Amen, brother. So we got a good there. So listen, 28. Thinking about having some baby bees.
In the future.
Thinking about having some. You know what's funny about this podcast? I actually watch the reruns and I laugh. I'm like actually sitting on the couch watching the rerun of the podcast. And I'm like, dude, that is so funny. I actually sit there laughing at the podcast.
Oh, I'm sure people listening are laughing too. They're having a good time.
That's, so here's the thing. You haven't been set to the couch yet.
No.
Ralph, have you ever spent some time on the couch?
I have not spent time on the couch, but I have had the other side of the bed feel very, very cold.
Okay. So Ralph hasn't spent some time on the couch. I'm going to be honest with you that, listen, I'm going to tell you this. The more kids that you have, sometimes you're going to long and wish for time on the couch.
Do you want the couch?
You actually desire the couch.
now this is completely off topic, but do your kids ever get into the bed with you? Is that something you allowed?
Are you kidding me? I don't know that you can't not allow it. I mean, like,
because I feel like I don't want to do that.
Well, I don't know that you necessarily have a choice in this matter, because there is things that happen that you don't have any control over. And it kind of goes like this. The bed is the honeycomb. You're staying in your honeycomb tonight. You're not leaving your comb. You are staying in your comb. We're going to fall asleep. Daddy, can you help me fall asleep? I need you just to help me fall asleep. Can you please help me? Will you lay with me for just 2 seconds? Will you read me one more story? Will you sing me one more song? Will you rub my back? Will you help me fall asleep? Okay, finally get to sleep. Bam, you're exhausted from putting them to sleep. It's like you worked an 8-hour day in a 30-minute shift, okay? Like getting the kids to bed is tough. So you get them to bed. They're in their own little beds. You're so happy about this. And then boom, 2:00 in the morning, it's like you're in the middle of a WWF match, and here comes little Johnny, and he's running in, and he comes flying in, elbows out, knees up, and he just jumps right in the middle of the bed. Boom! Wakes you up. You're in excruciating pain. Then you remember you have to pee, so then you get up, you rush to the bathroom as fast as you can. You go pee, you getting back in the bed, and he's laying sideways. He don't lay up and down. He lays sideways. So then you grab him and you move him back to his bed. Nope, that ain't happening. Where? The tears are coming. It's the middle of the night. Can you sing me a song? It's 1:30 in the morning. We aren't singing songs. This is happening. So then you're like, okay, I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to wait for this little truck driver to fall asleep, and then I'm going to carry him into his bed. But what happens? You just went pee. Your bladder is now relaxed. Your back might still be killing you, but you throw on some icy hot. So you're doing all right. You drift back to sleep. And all of a sudden, you're asleep again. And he's doing pirouettes in the bed. Or he's doing somersaults. Or he's talking to himself. He's kicking you, pushing you off the bed. And what you find is that most of the time, you might have a king-size bed. You sleep on your side, crooked, on a little corner of the bed. Like, how does that 330-pound man fit on 1/8 of the bed, huddled on the corner, no blankets, freezing, and trying to wake up and go to work the next day? That is the life of a male when your kids are between the ages of 3 and 9 years old. So,
did this happen recently?
Recently? Are you kidding me right now? It's been happening for 8 years!
Can confirm.
It's been happening for 8 years.
This is parenting.
Anyone out there who's listening that's a parent, I'm sure you resonate.
I have a destroyed sciatica. I'm in therapy.
Anyone who's not, makes you pause a little bit, huh?
I had to start beekeeping to reduce the stress.
How's that going for you?
Well, I've only been in the hives once. No, but seriously, that's the life of
honeybee,
a parent, and so like the bee, this is a long life, 45 days, 1 year a day. That's a long time. So I'm just saying we've covered a lot of topics today. We know that Ralph gets carded. I get carded. The 28-year-old beekeeper does not get carded. Maybe it's the beard. I don't know. He hasn't been sent to the couch yet. He will look forward to the couch in the future. When you have kids, they are going to do WWF-style wrestling moves in the middle of the night that are going to wake you up and make the middle of your night incredible adventure. We know that bees live for 45 days. We know that 12 bees in their entire lifetime will make 1 teaspoon of honey. We know that they travel, and each visit out of the hive, they're going to visit 50 to 100 flowers per trip. I'm going to tell you something else about the bees and the production. This is really important. The reason why our honey at Honey for Hope tastes so good is because we are out in the country. We really are surrounded by agriculture.
That's right.
And so the bees, the pollen that comes from these bees, basically what happens if you don't know how a bee produces honey is that a bee goes and it finds a flower, and it then pulls the nectar out of the flower, and then the nectar is turned to simple sugars. And what happens is the wing speed of the bee, as the bee flaps its wings in its hive, liquefies the simple sugars and turns them into honey through the form of evaporation. And so at the end of the day, that is what happens. So when the bee goes out, he makes his, that's how it comes back. Now, our honey tastes really good because, and people have said it's the best tasting honey they've ever had in their whole life. Now, this is true. I believe this. But part of the reason why this is so good is because of where we're at.
Yeah.
There's so many flowers. There's so many trees. There's so many there's so many things for the bees.
We have to
get nectar on.
A nursery.
We have a nursery right down the street. Yes.
You know, like
we do.
And I think we've mentioned that bees will fly up to 5 miles from their hive. Typically, they'll stay within a range of 2, but they'll go up to 5. And they can, their built-in GPS, if you will bring them right back to their hive location, which is why if you move your hives, you must move them at least a mile from their current location. If you move them like 100 yards or something, they're going to get confused.
Get lost.
Like, where'd my hive just go? Like, that over there is not my hive. It's right here. And
so bees can't move. So this whole thing we're talking about here is our honey tastes really good because of where we're at. Now, if you have honey in an area where, if you're producing honey, or you have hives in California where you've had a lot of fires, your honey is going to taste somewhat smoky. It's actually true. Here's the flip to that. You don't want to eat honey from New York City. The truth of the matter is that honeybees will actually pull sugars and different things from many different sources. They actually
you can't control where they go.
You can't control where they go, and they need water. So interestingly enough, like, we have a bathtub, and then what we do is we put sponges in that bathtub. It's out in the field, and then that gives little landing pads for the bees to come and get water, because bees actually drink water. They actually need water to be able to drink, and so. Like, if you think about it, if you're in the city and you're beekeeping and your bees are out, they're maybe getting that water in a puddle on the ground, or maybe they're in a trash enclosure. Have you ever opened up a trash enclosure and been swarmed by things that go buzz? Yes, you have. So at the end of the day, like, you need to be very careful of this. Plus, your water sources, like, the bees are going to get water from the water places that's nearby. If you're next to a city dump, if you're next to, a lot of, like homeless activity, like, that might be kind of tough on your honey, because they're going to bring that back. They're going to make that honey, that honey, that flower nectar breaks simple sugars, break it down. And then wing speed, the flapping of the wings, this is what's going to make the liquefaction of the honey. So you want to be very careful about where your honey actually comes from.
Yeah, I was in a beekeeping class recently, and our instructor said, don't ever label your honey pure organic or all natural or whatever, because you really can't control where your bees go. Like, if they were to fly into something that does have pesticides or something along those lines, like, you can't control that. You can put them in a location that reduces that kind of thing, like that they may not have access to it, but you can't control the flower that your bee goes to, or the trash that it picks something up from. But you can call your honey raw honey. It's a natural honey, and you can say something to the effect that we've done our due diligence. We've done what we can to make this as natural as possible. And so in honey production, there's typically 2 forms of honey, raw honey and processed honey. So raw honey is that you cannot filter out pollen or remove small organic materials. Like, you obviously will filter it out from the comb and like the extraction process that we walked through, but you can't filter out the smaller pollen and such. Where processed honey, if you do that, it becomes processed honey. And processed honey can also be anything that's cooked or pasteurized, blended, spun, all these things that you might see honey that says this in the store. And so that's how you can tell the difference between raw honey and processed honey. And processed honey doesn't mean a lot's in it, but it could. Where raw honey means there's nothing in it. That's as natural as you could possibly get.
That's
with
how I
your
want
honey.
my honey.
So that's the honey that we want to make
I
Honey for
want
Hope.
raw honey.
Is we want to have raw honey. We want that to be as natural, as organic as we possibly can. So just know that when you're searching for your honey at your local market or in your store. And
yeah, here's another thing to note: support your local honey company, right? Whether it's Honey for Hope or it's somebody else, support your local beekeeper. And I'll tell you why. Last year, honey production dropped a staggering 126 million pounds, or 14%.
Nationally.
That was in the United States.
Wow.
That's the statistic that I read. I mean, I'm sure you can go to any different news source, and if you read fake news, you're going to get the wrong information. So stay away from fake news. But at the end of the day, about 126 million pounds, a staggering. Bees are on the decline. So you know what? Support your local beekeeper. The truth is, the guy with 50 hives, 100 hives, like, you know, he's putting his life and his heart and his soul into that honey. He's making sure it's pure, it's best. You go into the grocery store, you know, and you buy honey that's processed and it's mass produced. Like, you're not helping the local beekeeper. And the local beekeepers, the backyard beekeepers, are a massive force when it comes to the actual production of honey. Like, these people love their bees. They take care of their bees. They pamper their bees. So really work to focus and help them. And you know, it's interesting that you say that the life of a bee is 45 days, because in the hive, the process of making honey takes approximately 45 days, where each bee develops a specific function. In this way, through teamwork, the correct development of the process is guaranteed, and therefore creation of high quality honey.
Interesting.
So it's really interesting how it works. Like, every bee has their part in the creation of the honey. The bee lives 45 days. We're going to say basically he lives 45 bee years. That's a long day.
That's a long day.
I'm just going to say.
It's 365 days in one.
That's a lot. So time is so relevant, right? Time is so like, whether you're a dog, a human, think about God. Like, I love God. And he says a day is 1,000 years, a year is 1,000, whatever. A day is 1,000 years, a year is 1,000 days, right? So like, time is just kind of happening. Mm-hmm. Imagine if you were God and it was like, 1,000 years is a day is 1,000 years. I mean, that's...
And then you're a honeybee, and one day is a year.
Honeybee and you're dead. I mean,
you ain't making it that long.
You didn't make it. So some other cool things to know, like the average hive is going to produce between, 30 and 60, pounds of honey per year. A great producing hive may produce up to 100. And if you're looking at costs, like, the average hive is going to produce between 300 and 600 in revenue per hive if you sell the honey. So that's about how you do that. But that 300 to 600 that you make on each hive, that doesn't nearly begin to cover the costs of, having the hive, feeding the hive, taking care of the hive, working in the hive, having the land for the hive, all of those things that come into it. So
and another,
support your local beekeeper.
Sometimes local beekeepers, like I've done some price checking and things, and it's probably anywhere from like $12 or $13 to $20, maybe $25 for a pound of honey, depending on, some of them are very specific in flavors. Like a lavender honey or a blackberry honey, but sometimes they're not. They're more generic. The reason why those are kind of expensive, maybe compared with the store, is one, it's more localized. But the containers, like the glass containers or the bottles and things, those cost a good chunk of change for the beekeeper to get at a mass level and then produce the honey. And so you're paying a little bit for the equipment and the process to do that, but you're if they're selling 100 bottles or 1,000 bottles compared to,
Yeah.
a massive commercial company, and we are ourselves a commercial company, but we're small. We're not going to have 10,000 hives anytime soon and just mass producing things. And so support the smaller businesses, the localized businesses, buy localized honey. I saw a stat earlier today that said from 2021 into 2022, honey production in Washington State decreased by 10%.
Okay, so Washington did a little bit better than the national average.
What was the national average?
14%.
14% reduction nationally, 10% here in Washington. 10% still seems like a pretty large number, And as we've been talking about, and if you get to know other beekeepers or companies, like the honeybee is on the decline nationally and even globally.
We want to love the honeybee.
And so that's a little concerning that honey's also decreasing.
Yeah, that's a bummer. Save your honey, stockpile it. It's like, listen, honey is like toilet paper in the pandemic. You just rush out and buy as much as you can.
You're going to want it.
We also sell it, honeyforhope.com. Come check us out, honeyforhope.org.
.org.
Honeyforhope.org. The .com just flows so naturally. I wish...
Whoever owns that.
God, that I used to have like 3,000 domain names.
You just bought a bunch?
Yeah, I did. And I let them expire over the years back in the late 90s. Anyways, that's another sad topic. Listen, how many times a year do you pull honey from your hives?
It depends on the strength of your hives, but the generally prime time is August, maybe a portion of September. That's because
that was going to be my next question. When do we pull it?
Time to pollinate throughout the spring and summer. Because they come out of the winter weaker, smaller. There's not as many there. They need to kind of regrow, recover, and explode in growth. And so that happens in the spring, early summer, and by late summer, definitely you can be harvesting. And if you see a beehive, there's going to be one, probably two Langstroth hive boxes. Those are the big, deep boxes. And then when you begin to see more, a third box, a fourth box, maybe a fifth box if it's a really producing hive. Those above the bottom two are all excess honey. You need to keep the bottom two for them to have their own food supply.
That was going to be my next question.
But everything else,
bees eat their own honey.
They do.
Bees eat their own honey. So we're going to check that off the list. So really cool. Bees eat their own honey. So that means that, if you see a bunch of bees dying, you probably don't want to eat that honey. I'm just kidding. So if you see a bunch of dead bees in New York, the honey's bad, right? They killed themselves off their honey.
No, that's not true.
That's not true. I absolutely made that up.
That's fake news right there.
That is fake news. That is fake news. I just produced fake news like CNN
Vetted here on the spot.
And MSNBC and all of these other fake news outlets. So there's a little political jab for you. The only reason I say that is because I was watching this thing and they were saying that, how Biden's economy is, when we are going way off the deep end here, is so strong. Best economy. And I'm thinking to myself, as a normal person, like I can take a lot of nonsense. Like I can listen to a lot of nonsense in my life and I can probably accept it. But when I read the Puget Sound Business Journal every morning and there's another company laying off thousands of workers, like I read it, right? I read it. Hey, Expedia, planning for more layoffs. Hey, Microsoft, more layoffs. Amazon, more the list goes on from companies that are making layoffs. And then, you look at the interest rates to buy a home, you as a young man.
It ain't happening anytime soon.
Everything comes back. This is the first time in American history that it's a bad decision to buy a house versus rent. And the interest rates are anywhere between 8 and 10%. But you look at that and you say, okay, well, what about the 1980s when when interest rates were 18 to whatever, 23% or whatever. But you know what the difference is? Is that back in that day, a house was $40,000. If you grew up in Ohio, right? Ralph, you're from Ohio.
Yes, sir, I am.
A house was like $19,000.
Yep.
I mean, like, you think about a $19,000 loan with 20% interest, like, I'm still okay with that because that's kind of like what happens on most people's credit cards. You know what I'm saying? So, like, at the end of the day, I'm all good, but, like, literally, you can't tell me that this is a strong economy when it's continual layoffs and you shouldn't even buy a property. I'm just saying.
Yeah, things aren't the greatest.
I'm just saying. So, like, at the end of the day, the fake news, maybe I took that a little too far. I'm not getting political on this show. I believe everybody is equal, especially bees. So a couple of more things was it's not recommended to pull honey from your hive in the first year. Why is that?
Hive strength.
We want to have good hive strength.
You want good hive strength. And I mean, it depends. That might be for the backyard beekeeper potentially who's got 3 hives, that it's like, okay, or 1 hive, like maybe, which by the way, always get more than 1 hive if you're starting, just so you can compare how multiple hives are doing.
How much is each hive worth? Do you know?
If you buy a nuke hive to start with, which is, I don't know, depending on where you go, maybe $200 to $250, maybe more, depending on your location. I don't know. Then you're going to add to that, your hive, it's going to grow. You probably got to put in some sugar water or some pollen patties or different ways to feed it. Your supplies. The hive's probably $700 in value, I'm going to guess.
$700 in value.
And then if you're producing honey, if you're producing honey,
yeah,
definitely over time it will increase value. You can make that money back in honey production.
So that's your
quickly.
Perceived value of the hive.
Ish, maybe 5. Sure, let's go 5. It doubles in value. That's probably fair. Perhaps more if it's a strong hive.
This is a good lesson for business. This is a good business lesson right here.
So it definitely, because you start small and it grows, and it can grow pretty exponentially.
It can.
But the first year is crucial. And if you get a new hive in the spring, the first 3 months are going to be really important to feed it.
Yeah, you got to feed it.
Because you want them to grow exponentially. Like our hives that we're getting in the spring, we purchased the comb that it's already going to come with, so they don't have to draw that out from the frames, because that takes time and energy and maybe a whole bee's life, if you will. So our hives that we're going to get in the spring are just going to be able to kind of hit the ground running, being able to produce honey and gather the pollen and nectar to start that already. So, I don't know. In general, I think we might be able to harvest twice a year, potentially more, depending on how we do.
On how strong our hives are.
Possibly like an early summer, like a June-ish, and then maybe a late summer, like a August or September. In the first year, we're probably not going to have that first wave of honey production, just so that our hives build up their strength. We want strong hives. That's how they survive the winter. That's how they keep producing. And a lot of beekeepers in our area, especially smaller beekeepers, are going to keep their hives here over the winter. We want to move them to California so that they stay healthier, stronger, and can even fly out of their hive more frequently. And so anyways,
that's good.
Honey production, look for it come late summer 2024. We want to be
there. So we're going to bring this thing in for a landing.
Yeah, really one question before you guys leave.
Yes.
All right, Ralph.
Yes,
one
Ralph.
takeaway that you guys, what's one thing you learned this year with these first 3 hives about honey production that you're going to take with you into the next year?
Well, mine is that when you eat raw honey, it has tons of, I'll just call them antibodies for lack of a better word, but there is a ton of nutritional value. Like eating a tablespoon of raw honey is better than taking your multivitamin. Dang it, that was fake news. I made up the second part. But it seems to me that eating a tablespoon of raw honey is really, really good for you and really, really healthy. I don't know if it's better than your multivitamin. So keep taking your multivitamin.
And we can...
go ahead and fact check that if you will.
We can come back to that one.
Go ahead and fact check that.
What about
so
you,
that's
Scott?
my biggest takeaway. How about you?
The process can be a little laborsome. I will say that. But I think the making sure your hives are as strong as possible, so that you have good honey production. You know.
Yep.
Because we had one hive that we just didn't even touch, and a two that we just took a little bit from this year, just to kind of taste test, if you will.
Yeah.
And so if the hives were even stronger, then maybe we could have taken more, And these hives coming up, we want to make them strong and viable.
Super strong.
So the stronger the hive, the more protected it is against predators and such. The more production it's going to be, the more likely it is to survive the winter and return next year with strength. And so the stronger your hive is, the better your hive is doing.
So as we bring this thing in for a landing, let's just recap.
We've been a lot of places today.
We've been a lot of places. We're going to recap just on the bees. We're not going to focus on the kids and WWF and fake news and economy and getting kicked out of bed. We're not going to focus on any of those things. We're going to focus here on 12 bees in their life give their life to make 1 teaspoon of honey. So 12 bees through their life, they will make 1 teaspoon of honey. The average bee is going to visit 50 to 100 flowers on each trip in and out of the hive. A bee's lifespan is approximately 45 days. I will say that the comment of a bee's life being 1 year per day was totally made up and just for the laughing and comedian aspect of the comical aspect of the show. So that is not a true fact. Just want to clarify that. The value of a hive is between $120 and $200. That's a new hive. So he said about 200. We learned about raw honey, the differences between raw honey and processed honey. We prefer raw honey on the show.
Yep.
You should be pulling you should not be pulling honey from your hive in the first year unless you want to take a taste test or unless it's really strong, comes with comb, some of those things that we discussed. We shouldn't take honey out of the hives more than 1 to 2 times a year. The best time to pull honey is between July and September, and bees eat their own honey. These are some of the key facts that we went over. Did I miss anything?
You know what? Honey's pretty great.
Honey's pretty great, which means I did a really good job on the recap. So listen, the purpose of this show is to just have fun. It's to laugh and to enjoy life.
We want to have a good time.
We want to have sweet conversation, and we want to have
You never know what's going to go.
Sweet honey.
a sweet time enjoying our honey, and we
sweet
want to have
honey.
a sweet time enjoying the show. Teach Me Bees. So what can you expect? You can expect some joking around. You can expect some laughter.
Some fun.
You can expect some off-topic commentary, and you can also expect to learn about bees.
Absolutely.
Because guess what? If you've ever spent time in college, we don't want to be the professor who bores you to sleep. Therefore,
We've all been there.
we've got to interject a little bit of fun.
You
All
know,
right.
we want to be the hybrid
That's
of, in high school, you always have the fun history teacher or PE teacher.
I was
But
thinking art teacher.
You don't learn a lot.
but-
Okay, maybe art teacher. And then you got the English teacher that all you do is learn, write, whatever. We would like to mesh those points. Some fun and some education.
We want to be like the PE teacher. Can
Yeah.
I say the hot art teacher? The hot art teacher.
I don't know.
and the
That would be me, the hot art teacher.
that's right. The Ralph's the hot art teacher.
Digital arts.
Ralph, Shake it like you make it. Anyways, listen, we're bringing this thing in for a landing. Teach Me Bees. It's an amazing podcast. It's a lot of fun. If you like this, if you enjoy this, we're back the same time next week. Thursdays are the day. Mark it in your calendar. And listen, if you are a beekeeper or you know bees and you want to join the show, give us a. We'd love to have you on the show. We'd love to hang out and chat with you. So listen, I'm Dave Wescott. Follow me on LinkedIn. Follow me on Facebook. And thank you so much for hanging out on Teach Me Bees.